Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
We sift through research and insights so you can get truly informed without, all the noise. Today, we're plunging into something that's, well, undergoing a bit of a quiet revolution in genetic counseling, qualitative research.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because there's this paradox right from the start.
Oh,
Well, an analysis looked at the Journal of Genetic Counseling from 2011 to 2017, and research methodology as a topic, it was the least common, like 1.9% of articles.
wow, okay, really low.
But when they looked at how the research was actually done in those articles, over a third, 34.4% used qualitative methods.
34%.
Yeah.
That's a huge gap between what's being formally discussed and what's actually happening in practice.
Exactly. It shows people are using these methods, relying on them, but maybe there's not enough conversation about, how to do it really well, how to maximize its potential.
Right. It's like having a powerful toolkit, but maybe not all the instructions. So our mission today in this deep dive is really threefold. We want to explore why qualitative work fits so naturally with genetic counseling. Then, unpack what it really involves. It's more than just collecting stories, right?
Definitely more.
And finally, how can the field really elevate this practice, to better inform care, but also to help establish genetic counseling as its own strong academic discipline?
That's the goal.
Okay, so let's unpack that first bit.
Yeah.
Why are genetic counselors, uniquely set up for this kind of research?
Well, the sources really point to the skills you develop just doing the job.
In clinic.
Yeah, in clinic, in training. Think about it. You're constantly talking about really complex, sensitive stuff. You become experts at communication, at pulling together lots of different information, often when emotions are running high.
Sure.
Those exact skills, they map directly onto things like doing in-depth interviews or running focus groups for research. It feels like a very natural extension.
It really does.
Yeah.
But, okay, here's the question then. Are those clinical skills, as good as they are, enough on their own?
That's the crucial caveat our sources emphasize. They're a fantastic foundation. Invaluable, really. That empathy, that connection, huge asset.
That's it.
But they argue it's insufficient. For top quality, really useful qualitative research that can genuinely change practice or build theory, you need more. You need that strong theoretical grounding and, importantly, methodological rigor.
Right. Otherwise, you just get interesting stories, maybe, not necessarily robust findings.
Exactly. You might miss the chance to build knowledge that's, more broadly applicable or really adds to the academic field. So providing some guidance on achieving that quality is, well, what we're aiming for here.
Okay, so if the clinical skills are the starting point, what is qualitative research, fundamentally? How would you define it simply?
Sure. So drawing on the experts cited in our sources, it basically starts with assumptions and interpretive frameworks. It's about studying the meaning people or groups give to a social or human problem.
Meaning.
Okay.
So less about counting, more about understanding the how or why.
Precisely. It dives into the richness of human experience. Why did this happen? How did it feel? What did it mean to them?
Got it.
And key features usually involve collecting data in natural settings, real life, analyzing it inductively and deductively to find themes, really centering the participants' own voices.
And the researcher reflects on their role too, right?
Absolutely. Researcher reflexivity is key. And the end goal, often it's either a really deep, complex description of something or maybe even a call for change based on what's been learned.
Okay, this next part our sources cover is where, for me, it gets really interesting. It's about the foundations.
Ah, the paradigms.
Yes, this idea that all research, qualitative or quantitative, starts with these fundamental assumptions, these paradigms. It's like the philosophical blueprint.
It really is. It shapes everything.
And they break it down into four things.
Yeah.
What you value, studying axiology.
Axiology, yep. Then what you think reality is, ontology.
Okay.
How you believe we can know that reality, epistemology. And then finally, how you actually go about acquiring that knowledge, methodology.
Wow. It sounds abstract, but you can see how that would dictate your whole approach.
Completely. And these four elements, they combine to form different lenses, different paradigms. Our sources highlight 5 common ones, kind of on a spectrum. And importantly, no single one is best. It depends on your research question.
So which ones are particularly relevant for genetic counseling?
Well, pragmatism comes up as highly relevant. This one really values finding solutions, using whatever methods work, qualitative, quantitative, mixed, rather than getting stuck in debates about truth.
So reality is kind of what works in practice.
Essentially, yes. It's encountered through experience. A great example was a study that looked at moral distress in genetic counselors. They used a quantitative measure and analyzed open-ended survey answers qualitatively.
Ah, getting both the numbers and the stories.
Exactly. Pragmatism in action, leading to really practical insights.
What else?
Another really important framework, especially now, is indigenous paradigms. These are grounded in ethical and spiritual bases, emphasizing relationships between people, nature, the cosmos.
And knowledge isn't just from books.
Right. It recognizes multiple sources. Intuition, experience, community knowledge are key. A study seeking opinions from Indigenous Canadians about underrepresentation in sequencing databases used a community-based co-design approach.
So research with the community, not just on them.
Precisely. It yields much richer, more culturally relevant insights. Super important for genetic health equity.
That makes total sense. Which then brings up this question the sources tackle. Does genetic counseling need its own specific paradigm?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, borrowing from nursing or sociology is common and valuable.
Sure.
But the argument is maybe those paradigms don't perfectly capture the unique ethics, the values, the core principles of genetic counseling, especially that focus on implementation, on direct clinical application, shared decision-making.
All right, maybe a field so focused on communication and patient experience needs its own tailored philosophical approach.
It's a compelling thought, especially as the field works to define itself academically.
Okay, so we've got the philosophy, the paradigms. Let's shift to the practical tools. You mentioned methodology versus methods. Can you clarify that again?
Sure. Think of methodology as your overall strategy, your research plan. Like, are you building a theory? Are you describing an experience? Methods are the specific techniques you use within that strategy, like interviews, focus groups, observation, how you analyze the data.
Gotcha. Strategy versus tactics.
Good analogy. And your methods have to fit your methodology and your research question. So for methodologies, grounded theory is one. The goal here is to develop new theories straight from the data.
When there isn't much theory already.
Exactly.
Wow.
Really useful in genetic counseling for building models of, say, patient decision-making or counselor practice. It helps build foundational knowledge.
Okay, what else?
Then there's phenomenology. This one is all about exploring those personal interpretations of life events. What is it like to live with a certain condition?
Getting into the subjective experience.
Deeply. A study exploring the role of Islam for patients with long QT syndrome used this interpretive phenomenological analysis, IPA, to understand that lived religious experience. It showed how vital that understanding is for person-centered care.
Really powerful.
And one more. Interpretive description. This is quite practice-focused. Its goal is to generate knowledge that has direct practical implications for a discipline.
Like clinical recommendations.
Precisely. A study used it to develop recommendations for trans-inclusive genetic counseling services. Not just understanding, but actionable advice to improve care.
Okay, so you've picked your methodology, you've gathered all this rich data interviews, observations, now you have to make sense of it. That's where coding comes in.
That's the core of a lot of qualitative analysis, yeah, coding. And like you said earlier, it's about labeling and categorizing the data.
And there are two main ways, deductive and inductive.
Right. Deductive is when you start with preset codes, maybe from existing theory or specific questions you have. It's efficient for finding specific things.
But you might miss surprises.
You might. Inductive coding is the opposite. You create the codes from the data as you go. No preconceived boxes. It's great for exploring new areas, letting unexpected themes just emerge from what people said.
More open-ended, letting the data speak.
Exactly. But sometimes you need to go even deeper than just themes.
How so?
Well, using more advanced strategies, like discourse analysis. This looks beyond just the words people use.
At how they say things.
Yeah, how things are said. Intonation, pauses, silences, nonverbals, how meaning is constructed in the conversation in its social context. A study used a specific type, TODA, theme-oriented discourse analysis, to look at how genetic professionals talked with kids to gauge their understanding.
So much information in the way we talk, not just what we say.
Huge amounts. And another technique is metaphor analysis, looking for the metaphors people use naturally when they talk.
Like a ticking time bomb.
Perfect example. That tells you so much about their anxiety, maybe more than a direct question would. Metaphors tap into how people think and make sense of things, especially complex or emotional experiences. It's really valuable for understanding impact and communication in genetic counseling.
And what's really cool is how these insights can be shared beyond just papers.
Oh yeah, the arts-based or creative methods.
Right, using poetry or art from participants, or researchers presenting findings through blogs, social media, even podcasts.
Absolutely. It makes the research much more accessible, gets those human stories out there to a wider audience, breaks down the ivory tower walls a bit.
Definitely. Okay, but we need to tackle a big challenge.
Yeah.
How do you show quality in this kind of research? It's not like quantitative stats.
No, it's different. And applying quantitative ideas like validity and reliability directly often doesn't quite fit. It can misrepresent the rigor involved.
And our sources really question the idea of saturation, right?
Yeah.
Calling it a logical fallacy. That sounds pretty strong.
It is strong language. Saturation is that idea that you stop collecting data when no new information seems to be emerging.
Seems reasonable on the surface.
It does, but the argument is, theoretically, you could always find new insights if you kept going indefinitely. Perspectives change, analysis deepens, so claiming a definitive point of saturation can be tricky.
And maybe used too easily, like a catch-all.
Potentially, yeah. Sometimes without really showing how that point was determined, it simplifies what's often a very iterative, complex process of analysis and collection.
So what are better ways to think about sample size or when to stop?
The sources suggest alternatives like theoretical sufficiency. Is your data rich enough, deep enough, to really build or support your theory? It's about conceptual depth, not just repetition.
Okay.
And another useful one is information power. This isn't just about numbers. It considers 5 things together: your study's aim, how specific your sample is, if you're using existing theory, the likely quality of the dialogue, and your analysis strategy.
So if you have, say, a very narrow aim and a really specific group who can provide rich information, you might need fewer participants.
Exactly. Higher information power means you might achieve sufficiency with a smaller sample. It's a more nuanced way to justify your decisions.
Okay, that makes sense. So zooming out, what does this all mean for the researcher? Or even for us reading the research? It seems like the researcher themselves is a really key part of the process.
Absolutely central. The researcher is the instrument in qualitative work. This brings in positionality.
Which is about.
Understanding how your own identity, your gender, ethnicity, background, privilege, professional role shapes how you see the world, how you interact with participants, the power dynamics involved, and ultimately your research.
And you need to be aware of that.
Critically aware, that's self-reflexivity. It's the process of constantly examining how your positionality influences the research. Not to eliminate it, that's impossible, but to understand it and be transparent about it.
The sources call it a moral imperative.
They do, because it directly affects the trustworthiness and how people interpret your findings, especially when dealing with sensitive human experiences.
And for genetic counselors doing research, there's that extra layer, right? That tension between being supportive and just gathering information.
It's a real ethical tightrope. Your training is to help, educate, support. Your research role is primarily to listen and understand without leading. Some approaches, like remedial pedagogical interviewing, try to address this by offering support after the main data collection, acknowledging that dual role. It requires deep reflection.
Which is why these positionality statements are becoming more common.
Yes, and so important. The authors of our main source actually include personal vignettes about their own identities, being neurodivergent, a gender, first-gen academic, and how that shapes their views on qualitative research.
That transparency helps the reader.
Immensely. It helps you understand the lens they're using. It's not about bias in a negative sense, but about acknowledging the perspective that inevitably shapes the work. It fosters trust and a deeper reading of the research.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the big takeaway seems to be that strong qualitative research isn't just like a nice-to-have or a preliminary step.
Not at all. It's fundamental.
It's essential for getting at those lived experiences, the meanings, the human side of genetics that really drives effective counseling practice.
Absolutely. And the field needs to keep pushing back against any lingering ideas that it's somehow less rigorous. Its rigor just looks different.
Yeah. And the call from the sources is clear. Make thoughtful choices about your approach.
Right. Be consistent, coherent, and transparent in how you carry out your research. That's how you ensure integrity, serve patients better, and really advance genetic counseling as a discipline.
It's about building that strong academic identity. So a final thought for you, our listener. As genetic counseling works to establish its unique academic voice, what core principles, ethics, values do you think are most crucial for building a truly powerful, discipline-specific, qualitative research framework?
That's a great question to ponder.
Definitely something to think about. We hope this deep dive gave you some valuable perspectives on the why and how of understanding human experience through research.